Hi everyone watching, my name is Aza'Aliyah McKnight, and I decided to do my project on street gangs. The title of my project is Street Gangs, the Impact of Gang Membership on Black Youth in Los Angeles and How It Affects Criminal Behavior. Alright, so a little bit about street gang history. The first street gangs emerged in New York during the 18th century, which consisted of 5 main groups: the Smiths Fly Gang, the Bowery Boys, and the Broadway Boys, which were all made up of Irish men. There was also the Fly Boys and the Long Bridge Boys, who were made up of blacks. The members were in range from early teens to mid-20s. The first street gang to have definite known leadership was the Irish gang, the 40 Thieves. They started out by stealing hard liquors as well as cabbage and lettuce from grocery stores. When the leader, Edward Coleman, was hung for beating and killing his wife, the 40 Thieves split up and they joined more politically connected gangs. In the 1960s is when African American groups started establishing territorial claims, and more common criminal activities started, like armed robberies and assaults. Gangs such as the Bloods and the Crips started to become more prevalent in the Los Angeles area. Alright, so next we have the problem. Gangs have become such a huge problem this day and age. Although they have been around since the 1970s, the police didn't start paying attention until later in the 1970s. There are many problems that come with gangs, including being part of the drug trade and organizing sex traffic rings, which include being pimps to prostitutes. The real problem that I'm focusing on today is the recruitment of youth. Gangs recruit youth to carry out their dirty work, and because of all these new recruitments, crime rates are increasing, especially for murder and any other type of violence that occurs within the gang area. Next, we have my first research question, which is, are gangs evolving and how does it affect society? Gangs may not be evolving in size, but they are evolving in crime. Since Los Angeles is one of the larger cities in the United States, there are more members and there's more crime. Gangs are getting smarter by recruiting youth, knowing that if they were caught, they wouldn't get much time in jail and would be able to get out and start working again. Fear appears all over the city, which affects civilians and how safe they feel in their own neighborhood. Because of incarceration and prevention programs, taxpayers are paying over $655 million a year. Taxpayers don't want to pay for things that can't help people. They may ask why, when that money could go to quote-unquote something better or something more important, because gangs aren't going to stop committing crimes and they're not going to stop committing violence. My second research question is, how does gang violence affect the Black youth in Los Angeles? Children or youth who are in a gang are affected by gang violence tremendously. They have to witness things that no child should have to witness. They are at a huge risk for physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. Girls, especially young Black girls, are exploited as prostitutes to gain money for their gang or their pimp. These youth get beat on when they don't do what they're told, or they end up dead because of that. Between 2020 and 2021, according to the Ministry of Justice statistics, youths ages 10 to 17 were ordered to court for being in possession of a firearm or a knife and ended up being imprisoned for it. Many Black youth have lost their lives from gang violence or ended up spending time in jail for their actions. Many people see that as a future for Black youth, and if no one believes in them, this is where they're going to turn to because there's no hope, according to them. Okay, so methods. There are 2 types of methods when it comes to research, and those are qualitative and quantitative research. For my research, I used a mix of both quantitative and qualitative. All of my research came from secondary analysis that I found from other authors' work, which is the quantitative part. For the qualitative research, I had extra follow-up questions, which I will be showing you in the next slide. I found the follow-up questions from secondary analysis as well, but I used other authors' studies that were conducted already to find the answers that I was looking for. I feel like my method was appropriate for the study because 1, I do not know a lot of youth gang members in Los Angeles, and 2, I feel like it was a bit of a safety risk to try to go to one of these neighborhoods to try and gather information from gang members, so I decided against that. This is my first follow-up question, and it's, what are the risks of joining a gang? There are many different risks for youth who want to join a gang. With school, they stop caring or showing up, which leads to not just academic failure, but can result in school dropout, and that is something that we see commonly nowadays. This leads to them starting substance abuse and drinking and committing other little petty crimes that can get them locked up. For girls, it tends to lead to a lot of teen pregnancies, which also forces them to drop out of school at such a young age. This is kind of for the next slide, but according to Casey Vaughns in the book In the Psychology of Black Boys and Adolescents, when a youth becomes a gang member, it changes their whole identity, which is also called oppositional identity. If a child had good grades in school, was highly liked, etc., that youth is not going to act the same because they have been accustomed to a new identity as a so-called gang member. Why does one turn to gang involvement? At a young age, it tends to be a cry for help or nobody is seeing or listening to them. They aren't getting the attention at home, so they want people who feel like a family when their real one doesn't seem to care. They are either peer pressured or they have low self-esteem and want to feel confident about themselves. So that kind of relates to what I just said about the changing identity. And on the slide, there's a couple other reasons why they would want to feel like they have to join a gang. Next, we have my theories. I picked 2 theories that I thought would represent my research very well, and that was critical race theory as well as labeling theory. Critical race theory is a framework that denotes that systematic racism is a part of American society, which we all know is very true. And the labeling theory is a theory that posits self-identity and the behavior of individuals that may influence who they are or classify their social class. I feel like these two connect to each other very well because when it comes to blacks and browns, society tends to judge a lot. If they see a black kid, they automatically assume they come from a low-class family or that they live in the ghetto. When society sees black people, they automatically assume, oh, he's a criminal, or oh, he's a thug, he does drugs, he's in and out of jail, and so on. Not every black or brown person is a criminal or a gang member, but that is what society labels them as because of the color of their skin. I also incorporated some ways to prevent youth gang membership or involvement. There's many prevention programs. There's the GREAT program, which is gang resistance and education. There's mentors, and there's civil gang junctions. Civil gang junctions are like neighborhood watch programs. They patrol the neighborhood and make sure that crime rate is low and that nothing suspicious is going on. Some complications during my project. One of my biggest struggles was when class started, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I went through like 4 different topics and none of them were interesting, and I knew I was going to be bored if I tried to pursue them until I finally realized I was like, okay, things are kind of interesting, so I decided to stick with that. I knew I was not going to be bored. As for how my research could be applied to people's lives, I think I could help a lot of people who live in gang-populated areas and who have young children that might be exposed to that or that are around that all the time. They'll have info on how to prevent their child from trying to live that life or wanting to be involved in any way. Another struggle that I had was a lot of the articles weren't what I was looking for, and I felt like I was lost. I felt like I was not going to finish in time. So that was one of the bigger struggles that I faced while trying to complete my project. So actually another reason why I chose this topic was because not just because street gangs were interesting to me, but I know a lot of people back home that started gang banging at a super young age, like high school age. And I've also have family members who were a part of that life back in the day. My dad actually had a rough childhood and he joined the Skyline Pyrus in San Diego at a young age. And I wanted to get a little more background on why young people felt they needed to join a gang. And in a way, it's knowledge for me to know when I have kids, so I'm able to prevent that from happening. I know the last slide kind of went over into the references, but these are some of my references. I think I have 8 or so maybe. They were super helpful, and I was able to find everything that I was looking for. We had plenty of time, and I'm grateful for that time that we had. It was an interesting project overall, and I was actually super excited that I got to do this because I don't get to learn about gangs on a daily basis. So it was a super interesting topic that I got to learn about, and overall the project was super fun to do. I'm glad we got the extra time to do it. It was actually a great learning experience. So thank you, Professor, for all the help. Thank you for answering my questions, and I hope everyone who watched this or whatever y'all did and enjoyed it and learned something. And yeah.